So a day after the Baltimore Ravens made a big splash to bring in stud wide receiver Deontay Johnson to add another weapon for Lamar Jackson in this already NFL leading offense, there's already some more trade speculation and buzz and rumors going on with guys like Zadarius Smith, Azeez Ojulari, interior defensive linemen, and more. Plus, we got some big injury updates with Michael Pierce being added to the IR, and he'll be out for the next 4 weeks minimum, and raising the priority even more for the Ravens to bring in some defensive help before the trade deadline approaches. We also got Lamar Jackson, who was not at practice today, and some more details behind the Deontay Johnson trade and much more Ravens news. So welcome in to another episode of Ravens Reports. It's your guy Noah here with For the Flock, as always, bringing you guys our top 5 news reports and storylines coming out of our Baltimore Ravens. Today, let's go ahead and dive right into the content. At number 1, let's get into these details with Deontay Johnson coming into Baltimore. By the way, he's practicing today, and it happened to be the day that the Ravens pull out the new Purple Rising helmets, looking pretty sharp. We got some clips here from the Ravens and some other media reporters of Deontay Johnson running some routes, and he looks pretty good in that purple. A lot of talk about what this means for the other wide receivers on the Baltimore Ravens, but it's made very clear in this tweet from Josina Anderson and the Ravens themselves that this does not have a big impact on their view of their top 2 wide receivers, who are both top 20 in the NFL this year in receiving yards, and Zay Flowers, who's 11th, and Rashad Bateman, who's 20th in the NFL among all wide receivers. If anything, this has more of an impact on Nelson Agholor as the wide receiver 3, and this helps the Ravens be more diverse in 11 personnel packages to be able to spread teams out and give more space for guys like Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell, who's coming off of IR very shortly, to have more space for them to operate and open up more stuff down the field. This 11 personnel package is going to be absolutely brutal, with Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, and Deontay Johnson now, who can all separate at a very high level and make plays down the field. This Ravens wide receiver group may be the best in Ravens history. Not to mention, you still got Derrick Henry, a future Hall of Famer toting the rock, Keaton Mitchell coming back, and 2 very elite stud tight ends in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, who can work over the middle of the field and be monsters in the red zone as well. Plus, this adds depth for the Baltimore Ravens because they got a little bit of a scare whenever Zay Flowers tweaked that ankle. What would that look like with Rashad Bateman as wide receiver 1 and Nelson Agholor as wide receiver 2? Tylan Wallace as wide receiver 3. You saw guys around the league getting hurt like Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Rashee Rice, multiple wide receivers with season-ending type injuries. Chris Godwin, we saw that up close and personal when Roquan Smith made that tackle. So the Ravens wanted more wide receiver depth, and they got it at a very, very low price. It only cost the Ravens $625,000 this year on the salary cap, and they basically exchanged picks. Now, the other thing here is that if he leaves in free agency, because he's a free agent next year, the Ravens would get a compensatory pick back anyways, so they really paid nothing to bring in a really talented receiver for Lamar Jackson. By the way, Deontay Johnson happens to be from Florida. Josina Anderson puts out on Twitter, she says, "I'm told Deontay Johnson's trade acquisition does not reflect a change in view of Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman as the team's current wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 per source. While I'm told Johnson was brought to Baltimore for his speed, separation, and punt returning abilities after Deontay Hardy's injury listed on IR, it's been reinforced that Flowers and Bateman, even going back to last year when the team added additional weapons at wideout, that the organization not only believes in the aforementioned duo, but also has very high confidence in them. I was told they are not messing with that." She's told, however, there is potential that Nelson Agholor's reps might feel the impact more than anyone else. But a vibe change is not expected to result from any displacement, as I'm hearing the current plan is for Nelly to host Deontay Johnson at his house while Deontay Johnson gets acclimated to his most recent team swap. Former Pittsburgh Steeler, then Carolina Panther. He has got 3 touchdowns this year with the Panthers and a pretty bad offense, and has had some nice production, 3 games over 70 yards. Had a nice game against the Bengals. Check out what Colin Cowherd had to say on this move.
"We'll go get Deontay Johnson has just been traded to the Baltimore Ravens. The Carolina Panthers are sending Deontay Johnson to the Baltimore Ravens. So Kansas City goes out, gets an edge rusher, and D-Hop. Baltimore says, okay, we'll play that game. We'll go get a better receiver, Deontay Johnson. So the Carolina Panthers, the New England Patriots, They're moving off players at the trade deadline. Kansas City's adding them. Baltimore is adding them.
So the Ravens had a great group of receivers last year, remember, with Odell Beckham and company. Yeah. They have now upgraded their skill position players with Derrick Henry. They got the young kid.
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers. Bateman actually showing okay despite the drop off the face mask this weekend. And now you're adding Deontay Johnson, who was a 1 or 2 in Pittsburgh last year. You
already got a Mark Andrews at tight end.
Mark Andrews likely the backup.
Yep.
They got the kid Mitchell, the young running back who's been on the PUP list all year. I got him stashed in fantasy.
Listen, they're saying we can't solve our defense. We'll make our offense better.
The Ravens have the best skill position players in the AFC. Who's got better?
No, you're right.
The depth wise.
No goes. Quarterback, running back, tight end, receivers. Baltimore's number 1, arguably in the league.
And Buffalo's second in the AFC to Baltimore.
At number 3, some big injury updates here. The Baltimore Ravens have added Michael Pierce to the injured reserve, so he'll miss a minimum of the next 4 games with a calf injury. Now, Travis Jones is already playing banged up. He didn't practice today, and he's been injured about the last week and a half. Travis Jones, has an ankle injury. Michael Pierce added to the IR. So that really leaves Broderick Washington, Justin Madubuike, and Brent Urban as your only 3 true healthy defensive tackles right now. It's also reported that the Ravens brought in Josh Tupou to the practice squad, who has spent some time with the Ravens here in the past. So the Ravens definitely need some more help on the defensive line. And depending on how long of a injury this is for Michael Pierce, if it goes beyond 4 weeks, will determine the necessity and the urgency that the Ravens have to bring in another defensive tackle, especially for the long term of the season. It's very possible the Ravens could bring in an interior defensive lineman via trade. I've heard some buzz about Calais Campbell possibly coming back and some other guys. But at number 4, I want you guys to check out this practice report. Lamar Jackson was not at practice today. That's a little bit concerning, but there has been times where he's been sore, been banged up. He's gotten sick. It's that time of year. So we'll find out more details of what exactly is going on, but Lamar Jackson was not practicing today. There's no, major, reason for alarm or concern right now as I'm recording this video. Some good news is that Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey were both back at practice. That gives a nice boost to the secondary. But some other absences, of course, Lamar Jackson, Rasheen Ali, cornerback Arthur Millette, defensive end Brent Urban, who has a concussion. So you can kind of scratch what I said earlier about him being one of the few healthy defensive tackles. And then Travis Jones out with the ankle. It's funny because Zadarius Smith was out of practice today with an illness, and Dan Orlovsky, he puts out Lions or Ravens as far as who's about to make the move, kind of alluding to the fact that he's not practicing because he's about to get traded. That would be big time if the Ravens brought in Zadarius Smith as a boost to the pass rush. And I would get real fired up, man. However, the Lions, definitely a Super Bowl contender. They want to get it done as well because they lost Aiden Hutchinson. Just keep in mind, if the Ravens were to meet the Lions in the Super Bowl, which is, if the Ravens go to the Super Bowl, it's a very high odds that the Lions are there because they look like the clear-cut best team in the NFC right now. But the Ravens, if they meet the Lions, it'd be a lot better to have Zadarius Smith on our side versus their side. I'd love to see us find a way to make it happen. And it is reported this trade for Deontay Johnson does not impact the possibility of the Ravens making another trade. It's just funny because, we had the live stream yesterday. We talked about this trade, and so many fans were mad as if this trade was the only trade that the Ravens could make, and they're like, hey, why are we putting our resources and our capital on the offense when our offense is the best in the NFL and the defense is struggling? Well, the reality is we didn't put much resources into this offensive move. If anything, we stopped another team like some other AFC contenders like the Texans, the Bills, the Chiefs from making a move like this to bring in Deontay Johnson, who's a solid weapon. Because you really just swapped a 5th and a 6th round pick. If Deontay Johnson walks in free agency, you get that compensatory pick back. So you paid $625,000 just on this year's salary cap to bring in Deontay Johnson. And it's reported here very clearly that this does not impact the Ravens' ability to make other moves. It's reported right here very clearly from James Palmer that the proper way to look at the addition of Deontay Johnson to the Ravens is this. They got deeper at wide receiver and as a roster, something that was needed. This trade won't change what they do or how they operate to my understanding, but as a whole makes them much better as a team this year. He says also don't expect this trade to impact the Ravens' ability to make any other moves before the trade deadline. So Ravens fans viewing this move as, hey, this was the move and they can't do anything else, are just simply misguided. And it's also important to note that just because you have a need at a position doesn't mean that other teams are willing to trade with you for that position. The priority might have been for the Ravens to bring in a pass rusher. And if Eric DeCosta is calling a bunch of teams saying, hey, who you got at pass rusher, who you got on defensive line or secondary on the defense to try to improve the defense, and no one's available or their asking price is too high, but he basically got Deontay Johnson for a steal. It's not like just because they made this move, they can't make another move. And it's not like just because the Ravens have a needed edge or on defense that other teams are willing to make that happen. All right, guys, so let me know the other top guys that you'd love to bring in. I'm hearing guys like Calais Campbell, Budda Baker, Zadarius Smith, Aziz Ojulari, and other guys. Let me know what you guys think about the trade. Let me know what you guys think about Lamar not practicing and all this other stuff, man. As always, smash the like button if you got any value out of today's content. I love you guys. I appreciate y'all, and we'll see you in the next video.
Ray, when he wasn't looking, he ran me over.